The cafeteria was already buzzing when the Vorkin slammed his tray into mine and sent my food spinning across the floor. Every head in the room turned. 300 students from 47 different species, all of them watching. The fluorescent lights above the Galactic Military Academy hummed the way they always did, indifferent and cold, while a creature twice my height stared down at me with yellow eyes the size of my fists. His name was Grex. He was a Vorkin, which meant he came from a gravity-heavy world where everything had to be big and thick-boned just to survive. He had 4 arms, a jaw that unhinged slightly when he spoke, and a reputation for breaking first-year cadets the way most people break pencils, for fun. I was Lieutenant Cadet Laura Holt. Human, 5 feet 6, 130 pounds, and I had just watched my lunch hit the floor because Grex decided my table was his table. Behind me, my bunkmate Callum whispered, "Laura, don't." I picked up my fork. Not because I was going to use it. I just needed something to hold while I looked up at Grex and said, very calmly and very clearly, "You're going to want to pick that up." The room went so quiet I could hear the ventilation system in the ceiling. Grex tilted his head. His translator bead clicked twice before it processed my words. Then he laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. It was the sound a landslide makes when it decides a village no longer needs to exist. "The small one speaks," he said, his forearms spread wide, performing for the room. "Does the small one know where she is?" "I know exactly where I am," I said. "I'm standing in front of someone who just made a mistake." Someone near the back of the cafeteria sucked in a sharp breath. A Diluvian cadet near the water dispensers quietly slid her chair back, putting more distance between herself and us. Grex leaned down until his face was level with mine. I could smell the sulfur compounds his species exhaled. It was not pleasant. His yellow eyes searched my face for fear, and when he did not find what he expected, something shifted behind them. Not respect, not yet. More like curiosity about a strange insect before deciding whether to crush it. "Warning delivered," he said, smiling with too many teeth. "Ignored." He straightened up, crossed 2 of his arms, and turned his back on me. That was the insult, not the tray. Turning his back meant he did not think I was worth watching. I set the fork down on the table. What happened next took 4 seconds. My right hand found the nerve cluster on the back of his nearest arm, the one hanging closest to me. Vorkin physiology is well documented in the Academy's xenobiology files. I had read every page of those files 6 months before I ever set foot on this station, because my older brother Nathan had told me something when I was 12 years old that I never forgot. He said the universe is full of things bigger than you, and the only way to survive that fact is to know more about them than they know about themselves. The nerve cluster I pressed was called the secondary ganglion bridge. On a Vorkin, it controls voluntary motor function in the lower 2 limbs. Apply firm, sustained pressure to the right spot and those limbs buckle. Not from pain, from simple neurological interruption. Like unplugging a lamp. Grex went down. Not slowly, not dramatically. He went straight down like a building with its supports knocked out, and the sound his knees made when they hit the floor was the loudest thing I had heard since I arrived at the academy. He caught himself on 2 of his upper arms, which kept him from going completely flat, but he was on his knees in front of 300 cadets, and every single one of them saw it. The cafeteria did not erupt into noise. It did the opposite. It fell completely silent. I crouched down so my eyes were level with his. I kept my voice low enough that only he could hear me. "I told you that you made a mistake," I said. "I meant it. Now get up slowly, pick up my tray, and we are going to pretend this did not happen. That is the kindest thing I can offer you right now, and I am only offering it once." Grex was breathing hard. His eyes had gone from amused to something complicated and dark. For a moment I genuinely did not know which direction the next 4 seconds were going to go. Then Instructor Vale walked in. Vale was a Sethian, roughly humanoid, with gray-blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a horizontal line across her face. She was the Academy's combat theory instructor, and she had been teaching here for 60 years. She stopped in the doorway, took in the scene, Grex on his knees, me crouching beside him, 300 cadets frozen in place, and she said nothing for a long moment. Then she looked at me. "Cadet Holt," she said, "my office, now." I stood up. I straightened my jacket. I walked across the cafeteria, and the crowd parted without me having to ask. Callum caught my eye as I passed him. His expression was the specific combination of horrified and impressed that I had come to recognize in humans who watched me do something they could not quite believe. I gave him a small nod and kept walking. Vale's office smelled like old paper and something herbal I could never identify. She closed the door behind us and sat behind her desk and looked at me for a long time without speaking. I stood at ease and waited. How long have you known about Vorkan neurological pressure points? She finally asked. Since I was 15, I said. My brother Nathan served with a Vorkan unit during the Selene border conflict. He sent me everything he learned. Your brother is Nathan Holt. It was not a question. Yes. She was quiet again. Outside the office window, the academy's outer ring was visible, massive and gray against the star field, and tiny figures moved along the walkways between modules like insects on a branch. Grex has hospitalized 4 cadets since the semester began, Vale said. None of them filed official reports. The academy administration has been trying to build a case against him for 6 weeks. I said nothing. What you did in that cafeteria, she continued, was reckless, unsanctioned, and deeply inadvisable by every standard regulation I am required to enforce. She paused. It was also, from a purely technical standpoint, flawless. I have never seen a civilian identify and correctly apply a Vorkan ganglia interrupt in a live confrontation. Most trained combat medics could not do what you did. I read a lot, I said. Something moved at the corner of Vale's mouth. It might have been a smile. On a Sethian, it was hard to tell. Grex will file a complaint, she said. I know. The review board will want a full account. I understand. And I will have to recommend a conduct citation. That is fair. She leaned forward and folded her hands on the desk. But I will also be submitting a separate recommendation to the Advanced Xenocombat Program. They have been looking for a candidate with practical applied xenobiology experience. She held my gaze. I suspect you are familiar with their curriculum. I had read every available document on the advanced program the week after I received my academy acceptance letter. I knew the washout rate was 68%. I knew the physical demands were extreme even by human standards. I knew that of the 11 humans who had ever been accepted, 4 had completed it, and all 4 had gone on to serve as senior tactical advisors on multi-species fleet operations. I am familiar with it, I said. Good. Vale sat back. Dismissed, Cadet Holt. Go eat something. You missed your lunch. I walked back out into the corridor and the door closed behind me. Callum was waiting outside. He had somehow managed to get a wrapped protein bar from the commissary and he held it out to me without a word. I took it. We walked together toward the cadet residence block and for about 30 seconds neither of us said anything. Then he said, You could have just moved to a different table. He would have followed, I said. They always test you once more after the first time. It is better to resolve it completely the first time. Callum was quiet for a moment. You knew that going in? I suspected it, I said. Vorkan social structures are dominance gradient based. A retreat signals available space in the hierarchy. Once you are below someone in a Vorkan hierarchy, you stay there. The only way out is to establish a clear boundary in a witnessed public setting. He stared at me. You read all of that somewhere. A xenosociology paper published 9 years ago by a researcher named Dr. Una Fairfield at the Titan Institute. It was in a journal that most people do not read because the title is extremely boring. Callum unwrapped his own protein bar and took a bite. He chewed thoughtfully. Laura, he said, I mean this with complete sincerity. You are the strangest person I have ever met. Thank you, I said. The conduct review happened 3 days later. It lasted 40 minutes. Grex sat on one side of the table, I sat on the other, and a panel of 3 senior officers listened to both accounts. When it was done, they issued me a formal citation for unsanctioned physical contact with a fellow cadet. They issued Grex a formal suspension for repeated documented intimidation, and the prior 4 incidents Vale had quietly submitted alongside the current report. He was gone from the academy within the week. I was told he transferred to a Vorkan-specific training facility in the outer systems. The cafeteria was different after that, not dramatically. Nobody came up to congratulate me or shake my hand. But when I sat down with my tray, there was always space. People would nod as they passed. A Diluvian cadet named Sira, the same one who had moved her chair back on the day of the incident, started sitting at my table in the mornings. She did not say much at first. She just sat there, which I understood was its own kind of statement. Over time, she started asking me questions, about human history mostly. She found it confusing and fascinating in equal measure. One morning she asked me why humans had spent so many centuries fighting each other when they clearly had the capacity to cooperate. I thought about it for a moment, and then told her that I thought it was exactly because humans knew what cooperation could achieve, that they were so afraid of what might happen if the wrong person controlled it. Fear and capability are a difficult combination, I said. Most of our history is the story of figuring out how to carry both at once without destroying ourselves. She was quiet for a while after that. Then she said, Your species worries me. I know, I said. We worry ourselves too. She looked at me steadily. But I think, she said slowly, that is also why you are so difficult to stop. You already know all the ways you can fail, so you are always preparing for them. I had never heard it put quite that way before. I thought about Nathan, about the files he sent me, about the years of reading and preparing and learning everything I could about a universe that was genuinely trying to be bigger than me. I thought about a 12-year-old girl in a small house on a cold northern night, reading about alien anatomy by the light of a cheap tablet, while her brother was somewhere far away learning how to survive. That is exactly it, I said. Sierra nodded once, as if something had been confirmed. Then she picked up her drink and went back to watching the room, and I did the same, and we sat there in the bright and busy cafeteria of the Galactic Military Academy. Two very different creatures from two very different worlds, watching the universe go about its business. 3 weeks later, the acceptance letter from the Advanced Xeno-Combat Program arrived on my console at 6 in the morning. Callum was still asleep. I read it twice, then I set my tablet down and looked out the small porthole window beside my bunk at the stars. Nathan had been right about all of it. The universe was full of things bigger than me. That had never been the problem. The problem, if you could call it that, was that I had never quite managed to care.